Here's my review of Killers of the Flower Moon. I mean, this movie was incredible, and it might be the best film of the year. And it was 3.5 hours, and I never felt bored. And that's just a testament to how good that this movie was. So, in 1920s Oklahoma, we see the Osage tribe where they find oil on their land, and then they are mysteriously murdered, and then the FBI is investigating these murders. And that's kind of the basic synopsis of this movie, where in a way it's an investigation movie, but there's just way more than that. It is just fantastic. Where Ernest Burkhart, he comes home from the war and he is slightly injured, and he returns to William Hurt, I believe, who is his grandfather, played by Robert De Niro. And I mean, Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, I mean, fantastic performances from both of them. And I'm just going to say this right now. I mean, kind of spoilers, but it's very obvious. I mean, William Hale is the villain. And I feel like that's kind of revealed very early on, or at least it's very obvious. But just in case, so I said spoilers. And he's basically pulling the strings behind these murders of these Osage people. And it's just despicable. Like, this movie is very, very sad, and it can be hard to watch at certain points where you're just seeing these innocent people, like, you're just seeing these innocent people just die, and it just makes you sick. And because Ernest is injured, he has to work as like a chauffeur where he meets Molly Burkhart, a Native American woman who is part of the Osage tribe and does have rights to the oil that was found there. And I mean, Ernest is a very interesting character because I mean, he only kind of marries her because his Uncle William told him to, just in a con, just to get this oil and this wealth. But what makes this movie so interesting is he does fall in love with her. Like, you do buy the relationship. And you do kind of wonder, I mean, is this man really a bad man? Like, what he's doing is terrible, but like, he kind of like, find what was really interesting is like, in terms of Leonardo DiCaprio's performance, is perfection. Because, like, at some points, like, you know what he's doing is kind of awful, but you know he cares about this woman. And I mean, like, I think Lily Gladstone probably is the best actress, like, at least gives the best performance of this entire movie. She is so good in this movie. But one thing I think is a little off is I don't really understand how earlier Molly is discussing, like at a certain point they're discussing, like, how they think that Ernest is kind of like connections, like they know his connection to William, and they know that like they might be after their oil, but she still ends up kind of with him, which in a way just makes this such a twisted relationship. And what makes it so engaging is, like, I mean, like, this is kind of an awful relationship. I mean, she knows that she's probably only being used, but in the same way, she's falling for Ernest, and Ernest is falling for her. So that's what makes this such an interesting movie to watch. And you see, Molly's sister Anna. I mean, you see how she also has doubts about Ernest, and it creates this conflict throughout the whole movie because, in a way, you know that these two people, it's probably for the best that they aren't together, but in a way, you still kind of buy them together. And I think that's what was just so insane about this movie is, it, like, these people should not be with each other, but they are. But in a way, you still kind of buy it. And a lot of times through this movie, you're seeing these Native Americans get killed, and it just makes you sick. And through that, it's building a lot of tension because you kind of don't really know who's going to die next. And it's just, and the deaths are just brutal. Like, you see these people, like, just killing these Native Americans in just awful ways. I mean, it just makes you sick. And it's one of those movies where you're watching it and, like, you're like, this is sick. This is awful. But it was just done in such an incredible way, which I think was what makes this movie so good. And, like, of course, when Anna dies, I mean, like, you get some amazing performances from Molly, or, well, from Lily Gladstone, as Molly's just mourning over the death of her sister. And it's just fantastic. This movie is fantastic. And this is like the first Martin Scorsese movie that I saw in the movie theaters, and I thought that it was a very, I thought that it was just a really cool experience. I mean, one of the greatest directors of all time. Like I've never seen a movie of his in theaters. I've only seen a couple of his movies. Like I've only seen, I believe, Gangs of New York and Goodfellas. I thought they were both excellent. So it was really cool to see one of his movies in theaters. And I will say, I think that this is my favorite of the three I've seen. Like I said, only three, but I think that this is the best one of those three. And I thought that Robert De Niro gave such a great performance as well as Brendan Fraser as Robert De Niro's lawyer, as William's lawyer. As I mean, we know that William is guilty. I mean, he knows it. I'd argue even like the lawyer knows it. I mean, Brendan Fraser is fantastic as well. He's not in it that much, but I mean, hey, recent Oscar winner. Hey, it's good to see him. And like Robert De Niro, like I said, he gives such a fantastic performance. He's just sickening. Just you sense the cruelty and the hate he has for these people. Like there's like parts of this movie where he's talking down to these Native Americans, and you just absolutely hate him. And I will say that for a movie that has a very serious tone, there are some moments that are genuine. There's like a moment that is like genuinely kind of funny, which is very weird because it's talking about the dark subject matter. As I mean, William, like he's basically him and Ernest like just killed this Native American, and he's kind of almost joking about it, and it's done in a really weird way where it doesn't really feel like it breaks the tone. And and you when with Leonardo DiCaprio's character, he's that's what makes him such an interesting character because when I see him, I don't really see him as like an evil character as I do William. And you kind of know like because he does love his wife, he loves his kids. They eventually have kids and get married. Like he's just such a unique character because I mean, what he's doing, some of the things he's doing are awful, but like at the same time, he's very likable. I mean, is that just because it's Leonardo DiCaprio? Maybe, but nonetheless, I mean, he's very likable. And because this movie is around 3.5 hours, nothing really feels rushed. Like Ernest and Molly's relationship feels perfectly built up, even though at a certain point, like it's kind of almost. I mean, he married her just to kind of get to her money, but a lot of it does feel natural, and eventually you do feel like they do actually fall in love, which is just it's so cool. It's just so weird. Like you know that this is awful, but in a way you kind of like seeing them as a couple, and it's just because it's just done so well. Like I can't say enough good things about this movie. And then at another point, I mean, Molly gets very sick in this movie, and she's actually sick for quite a bit of the movie. And you kind of realize how Ernest is almost keeping her sick, which is just such a despicable thing to do. And that's what makes this relationship just so twisted. Is like you feel like they do love each other, but like in a way, he almost wants to like kill her just to get her money, but at the same time, he doesn't. And eventually, like he does get arrested in many ways, like because of this ongoing FBI investigation. Like he's linked to the murders of these people, and it's just a movie. Like, I, I mean, it's just a movie. Like, when he was arrested, I'm like, yeah, he should be arrested, but in the same way, like, I mean, William's not because William actually kind of bails him out because he's so rich because of this oil that he's kind of like scamming through the whole time, and I don't know. It's just the ending is very just it is great, but it's just very fascinating. And like I said, Lily Gladstone's performance is just excellent. Like when her family and when her parts members of her tribe dies, like she gives such a great performance. Like it makes you feel genuinely sick that this actually happened. And I mean, this is another movie where when you're watching it though, it is a movie where you feel like and when it's over, you feel like that was a lot and you feel sick, but at the same time, it was an incredible experience. It was and that's one thing I just find kind of interesting just about sad movies in general. Like you can watch something heinous, but at the same time, it's just done in such a way where it's incredible. So yeah, overall, this movie is beautiful, especially at the beginning when they find the oil. I mean, the acting is incredible, especially from Lily Gladstone. But of course, I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio is amazing as well as Robert De Niro. And Robert De Niro is kind of funny in this, as well as Leonardo DiCaprio because of his accent. But overall, it's way more dramatic. But in conclusion, I thought that this movie was just fantastic. Probably the best movie of the year. I'd say, and yeah, if you have not seen it, I would highly recommend checking it out. It's great.